Cuba is a land of breathtaking scenery, where white sand beaches, clear blue waters, and a warm tropical climate create an inviting sense of peace. Yet beyond its natural beauty lies a more complex reality, where daily life can be shaped by limited electricity, food shortages, and the ongoing effort to secure clean water. Today I'm revealing 15 shocking realities that tourists never see and locals rarely discuss openly. Let's start with something that touches every Cuban every day: food. For more than 60 years, Cuba's rationing system has been portrayed as one of the revolution's great social achievements. Every citizen carries a small booklet called the Libreta de Abastecimiento, a ration book that dictates what they can buy and in what quantity. But that system has deteriorated dramatically. According to Reuters reporting in 2024, Cubans were entitled to about 80 grams of bread per day through their ration card. Today, that amount has fallen to just 60 grams, barely 2 slices per person. The government's food allowance now provides less nourishment than a light breakfast, forcing families to rely on the informal market to survive. Official stores are often empty, so ordinary people sell rice, beans, or vegetables on the streets despite the risk of fines or arrest. These are not profiteers, but neighbors trying to feed their communities. The economics are staggering. The average monthly salary is around 4,000 Cuban pesos, roughly $28 at the official exchange rate, while a dozen eggs cost between 3,000 and 3,500 pesos. In other words, nearly a full month's wages for a basic source of protein. Families face agonizing choices every day: buy protein or medicine, cooking oil or soap, rice or bus fare. These are not questions of comfort but of survival. The psychological toll is immense. Parents hear their children ask for food they can't provide. Elderly Cubans who once trusted the system now struggle to afford a simple meal. The constant stress of food insecurity seeps into every aspect of life, weakening bodies, straining relationships, and eroding hope. Cuban women face particular challenges that expose the depth of the country's economic crisis. Despite Cuba's official commitment to gender equality and the fact that women make up more than 60% of university graduates, according to the Oficina Nacional de Estadística y Información, daily life tells a very different story. Personal appearance holds deep cultural importance, yet grooming has become a luxury many can't afford. A bottle of hair dye costs about 1,500 pesos, roughly half the minimum monthly salary. Makeup, skincare products, and even soap are often unavailable or unaffordable. Many women now practice estrategias de belleza, beauty strategies, deciding which parts of their appearance they can maintain. These choices reveal deeper pressures that affect dignity and self-expression. The shortage has also created an informal beauty economy. Women run home salons, make cosmetics from scarce ingredients, and form networks to share limited supplies. These small ventures operate in a legal gray area, since private business remains tightly restricted. The struggle extends far beyond cosmetics. Professionals, teachers, doctors, and engineers often cannot afford proper work clothes, wearing the same outfits out of necessity. The contrast between their education and their economic reality creates a constant psychological strain, eroding confidence and professional identity. Do you believe Cuba's economic crisis has made it nearly impossible for women to maintain their personal and professional appearance? Please comment number 1 if you think yes. Like me. Mental health remains a taboo topic in Cuba, where discussions about depression, anxiety, or other psychological conditions are often avoided due to persistent social stigma. Many view mental illness as a personal weakness, leading people to endure suffering in silence rather than seek help. This silence extends to sexual and reproductive health, particularly sexually transmitted infections and HIV/AIDS. Although healthcare services are available through the national system, social norms, especially in conservative or rural areas, discourage open discussion. The stigma surrounding HIV/AIDS still results in discrimination and isolation, discouraging early testing and treatment. Chronic illnesses such as cancer, diabetes, and heart disease are also rarely discussed openly, often seen as personal failings rather than medical conditions. Disabilities remain largely invisible, limiting access to support and community inclusion. Substance abuse, especially alcoholism, carries strong moral judgment, which prevents many from seeking rehabilitation. Even conversations about obesity or nutrition are sensitive, complicated by widespread food scarcity. While Cuba's public healthcare system is internationally recognized for its reach and preventive focus, cultural stigma continues to undermine its impact. The reluctance to address mental and emotional health openly denies many Cubans access to care that could greatly improve their quality of life. While much of the world moves deeper into the digital age, Cuba remains mired in what many describe as digital darkness. Power outages occur regularly across the island, and international media reports that blackouts have become more frequent since 2024. Some families have even turned to producing charcoal for cooking, a striking reality in the 21st century. Nationwide power cuts can last up to 20 hours a day, leaving neighborhoods without electricity for most of their waking hours. Such instability makes working, studying, or maintaining daily routines nearly impossible. Internet access adds another layer of isolation. Connections are slow and unreliable, and online activity is tightly monitored by state authorities. Independent journalism is severely restricted, and those who publish critical content risk harassment or imprisonment. Many independent news outlets are blocked or forced to operate from abroad. Cuba's digital isolation is also reinforced by both U.S. sanctions and domestic controls. Major platforms and online services face limited functionality, and access to many international apps and emerging technologies remains restricted. As a result, Cuba maintains one of the most tightly controlled digital environments in the Americas. This isolation limits not only social media use but also education, entrepreneurship, and access to information, essential components of modern life. Don't miss our next journey into the hidden corners of the world. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know. In Cuba, discussing personal income or financial status is widely considered impolite and is generally avoided in everyday conversation. This norm stems partly from the state-controlled economic model, where most wages are standardized and differences between professions remain relatively small. Talking about personal wealth is often viewed as boastful or insensitive amid the economic hardships most Cubans face. Cultural values emphasizing humility, equality, and collective solidarity reinforce this silence. Even asking about prices or bargaining too forcefully can be seen as disrespectful. In professional or business settings, money matters are handled with great discretion to preserve respect and social harmony. This reluctance also reflects deep mistrust in the country's fragile economy, which continues to struggle with inflation, currency instability, and chronic shortages. Many households depend on informal trade or remittances from relatives abroad, adding further complexity to conversations about money and survival strategies. Ultimately, this financial discretion mirrors Cuba's broader economic challenges: persistently low wages, limited access to goods, and widespread scarcity. Yet amid these difficulties, Cubans continue to show resilience and ingenuity in managing daily life, often without openly acknowledging the depth of their struggles. Those iconic 1950s American cars that fill Cuba's streets are more than picturesque symbols, they're a lifeline. Known locally as almendranes, these vintage vehicles operate as shared taxis that follow fixed routes, carrying passengers who split the fare out of necessity, not nostalgia. Their patched-together engines, rebuilt countless times with improvised parts, roar through Havana's streets as testaments to Cuban ingenuity. Inside, strangers squeeze together, sharing space, news, and survival tips, from rice prices to baseball scores. Then there are the guaguas, Cuba's public buses, the main mode of transport for millions. Waiting for one can take hours under the Caribbean sun, with no reliable schedule or information. When a bus finally arrives, people instinctively help one another board, seats are given to the elderly or pregnant, and water is shared among strangers. This solidarity, born from hardship, defines daily life. While tourists glide through Havana in air-conditioned taxis, ordinary Cubans spend hours commuting between neighborhoods. Every trip requires careful planning and extra time to account for inevitable delays and breakdowns. The psychological toll is immense. Missed job interviews, canceled medical appointments, and postponed family visits are part of a daily struggle where transportation is never guaranteed. Few images capture Cuba's economic dysfunction more vividly than the daily lines outside banks across the island. People wait for hours just to withdraw their own money, forming informal queuing systems and unwritten social rules to manage the crowds. According to the Banco Central de Cuba, recurring power outages often disable ATM networks nationwide. When the electricity fails, a near-daily occurrence in many areas, electronic banking simply stops. Yet the problems run deeper than infrastructure. Cuba faces a severe shortage of cash in circulation. The BCC has admitted that banks frequently lack enough physical currency to meet public demand, leaving customers unable to access their legally deposited funds. Strict ATM withdrawal limits worsen the crisis. Daily caps typically range from 4,000 to 15,000 pesos, about $11 to $30 at current informal exchange rates. Families trying to cover rent or buy essential medicines must return repeatedly, enduring hours-long waits each time. Ironically, most transactions in Cuba still require cash. Although the government promotes digital payments as a solution, unreliable internet access and frequent blackouts make electronic transactions inconsistent at best. Many small businesses refuse card payments not by choice, but because their terminals rarely function. The result is a vicious cycle. Cubans depend on cash for nearly everything, yet obtaining it has become one of the most exhausting and uncertain tasks of daily life. Knowing that Cuba's cash shortage makes it nearly impossible for people to access and use their own money, we realize we're still luckier than they are, right? By the way, we'd love to know where you're from, and comment where you're watching from so I can say hi. Although Cuba is internationally renowned for its rum and lively nightlife, public intoxication is strongly condemned and considered a serious violation of social norms. Cuban culture places a high value on personal composure and respectability in public spaces, and drunken behavior is widely seen as disruptive to community harmony. Public intoxication is not only socially disapproved of, but also legally penalized. Under Cuban public order regulations, disorderly conduct linked to alcohol can result in fines, temporary detention, or mandatory community service. This stigma reflects a broader cultural emphasis on self-control and mutual respect. Even in festive environments where alcohol is integral, from family gatherings to national celebrations, social expectations dictate that people drink responsibly and maintain composure. Excessive intoxication is interpreted as a lack of discipline and respect for others. The norm surrounding alcohol use underscores a central aspect of Cuban communal life. Individual behavior is expected to align with collective order. Preserving public harmony and dignity remains a deeply ingrained value, shaping how Cubans balance personal enjoyment with social responsibility. Still, perhaps the biggest contradiction of all lies in how money itself is divided, a system that has quietly created two Cubas. Few things reveal Cuba's economic contradictions more clearly than the rise of government-run dollar stores across the island. Introduced in 2019, these shops sell imported goods exclusively in foreign currency, mainly US dollars and euros, creating a parallel economy beyond the reach of most citizens paid in pesos. Inside these stores, shelves display imported foods, appliances, and electronics unavailable in regular state shops. Yet prices are fixed in hard currency, making them inaccessible to families surviving on peso-based state salaries. While the system provides the government with vital foreign revenue, it has also deepened social inequality. Cubans with relatives abroad who send remittances can buy high-quality goods, while those without such support face chronic shortages and rising frustration. Cuba officially uses the Cuban peso, but multiple exchange rates coexist. State exchange houses offer about 120 pesos per US dollar, while informal street markets trade roughly 300 to 350 pesos. This gap divides the population into two economies, one tied to foreign currency, the other trapped in devalued pesos. The result is a striking paradox in a nation built on socialist ideals. Air-conditioned dollar stores with full shelves stand just blocks from state shops where even basic goods are scarce, a visible reminder of how far Cuba's promise of economic equality has eroded. Cuba's tourism industry is starkly contradictory. The government promotes the island as an affordable Caribbean destination, yet the gap between visitor experiences and local realities is immense. In Havana and other tourist hubs, short-term rentals can exceed US $1,000 per week, while long-term stays often cost around US $600 per month. Even at those prices, accommodations frequently lack the reliability visitors expect, with power outages, weak water pressure, and inconsistent maintenance common. Just beyond the polished tourist zones, conditions change dramatically. Piles of uncollected garbage line residential streets, and many buildings stand in severe disrepair, some nearly uninhabitable. Cleanup and renovation efforts occur sporadically, but progress remains slow and uneven across neighborhoods. Authorities have introduced fines for residents who harass or overcharge tourists, seeking to protect a key source of foreign revenue. However, this policy highlights a deeper divide. Tourists enjoy priority services, security, and access to well-maintained areas, while locals contend with failing infrastructure and limited municipal support. The contrast is most visible in restaurants, shops, and hotels. Tourist establishments offer air conditioning, stable electricity, and stocked shelves. Cuban-run stores often face shortages and blackouts. The result is a two-tiered reality, one built for visitors and another endured by those who live there every day. When official distribution systems collapse, ordinary Cubans turn to the informal economy, now an indispensable lifeline rather than a marginal activity. What was once a minor supplement has become the primary means of survival for millions. The black market operates in a legal gray zone where necessity meets prohibition, exposing citizens to serious penalties for acts driven by desperation. Prices in these informal markets reflect the country's deep economic distress. Rice, once guaranteed through state rations, now sells for around $11 per pound, several times higher than official rates and equivalent to multiple days' wages for a teacher or nurse. Similar markups apply to cooking oil, soap, and medicines, when they can be found at all. With state stores often empty for weeks, informal vendors provide the only consistent source of essential goods. These networks are not organized crime rings, but survival systems built by ordinary people filling gaps left by a failing economy. Currency exchange adds another layer of uncertainty. As the peso rapidly loses value and access to dollars and euros remains restricted, Cubans rely on unofficial markets using encrypted apps or trusted intermediaries. Rates fluctuate daily between roughly 300 and 350 pesos per US dollar, depending on supply and government crackdowns. Participants face constant risk of fines, confiscation, or arrest for hoarding or economic speculation, even though their actions sustain the very system the state can no longer support. Do you think Cuba's informal economy has become the only way for most people to survive? Let's discuss in the comments section. Cuba's approach to LGBTQ+ rights reflects a history of repression followed by gradual reform. In the years following the 1959 revolution, homosexuality was not only taboo but also criminalized through state policy. Many gay men were sent to labor camps known as Unidades Militares de Ayuda a la Producción during the 1960s, and public expressions of homosexuality were censored. Although homosexuality was decriminalized in 1979, social stigma persisted for decades. Acceptance began to grow largely through the advocacy of Mariela Castro, daughter of former President Raúl Castro, who directs the Centro Nacional de Educación. Under her leadership, Cuba launched public education campaigns and established the annual Cuban Days against homophobia and transphobia. Legal reforms have expanded in recent years. The 2022 Family Code legalized same-sex marriage and adoption, and gender-affirming healthcare is available through the national system. Urban centers such as Havana now show greater visibility and acceptance of LGBTQ+ communities, though prejudice remains common in conservative and rural areas. Public displays of affection between same-sex couples can still provoke criticism, and many continue to face discrimination despite formal protections. The struggle for full equality in Cuba highlights an ongoing tension between progressive legal change and deeply rooted social conservatism. In Cuban culture, refusing a gift or favor is considered deeply impolite and can even be taken as a personal insult. Interpersonal relationships and community bonds are central to daily life, and such exchanges are seen as genuine expressions of goodwill and solidarity. Accepting a gift, whether or not it is needed, acknowledges the giver's effort and kindness. This reflects broader values of interdependence and mutual aid that have evolved through decades of economic hardship. In a society where material goods are scarce, generosity often carries emotional and moral significance far beyond its monetary value. Reciprocity is essential. Gifts are frequently returned not with objects but through help, support, or favors that sustain vital community networks. These informal exchanges strengthen trust and cooperation, often making the difference between managing and struggling to survive. Giving is regarded as a moral duty and a sign of respect, while rejecting an offer can strain relationships or disrupt social harmony. For this reason, Cubans frequently go to great lengths to ensure that gestures of kindness are accepted and appreciated. This enduring custom embodies a core aspect of Cuban identity, a culture of sharing that prioritizes human connection over material wealth, reinforcing unity and resilience even in times of scarcity. In Cuba, eating beef is not merely expensive, it's tightly controlled by the state. The government regulates all beef production and distribution, reserving consumption mainly for tourists in state-run hotels, hospital patients, and elderly residents in care facilities. Ordinary citizens cannot legally slaughter cattle without government authorization, which is rarely granted. This policy, rooted in agricultural regulations intended to protect cattle herds for milk production and limited export, has existed since the 1960s. As a result, beef has become a near unattainable luxury for most Cubans. Unauthorized slaughter or sale of cattle can lead to severe penalties, including heavy fines and prison sentences of up to 10 years. A black market for beef has emerged, where small portions sell for exorbitant prices under constant threat of government raids. The scarcity of beef reveals deeper flaws in Cuba's food system and stark inequalities between foreign visitors and local citizens. While tourists can order steak in hotel restaurants, most Cubans rely on rationed chicken or imported ground meat substitutes. Beef dishes have virtually disappeared from home cooking, becoming symbols of privilege or rare official permission. The lengths people go to obtain it, often through risky and clandestine means, reflect the wider struggle for food security and the persistence of scarcity in everyday Cuban life. Yet it would be misleading to portray Cuba only through hardship. Even amid scarcity and uncertainty, the Cuban spirit endures, resilient, inventive, and profoundly human. It is a quiet lesson in adaptability and dignity that redefines what happiness and fulfillment mean. Solidarity thrives where resources fail, Neighbors share the last portion of rice, strangers offer shade during long bus waits, and smiles emerge as acts of defiance rather than denial. In Havana's neighborhoods, spontaneous music fills the air, not staged for tourists but born from the community itself, an unbreakable expression of identity and joy. Cuban humor, sharp and ingenious, acts as both resistance and relief. Through wordplay and irony, people comment on daily struggles without crossing political lines, transforming hardship into laughter. Creativity flourishes everywhere. Artists craft sculptures from discarded metal and wood. Community theater groups rehearse in courtyards. Children wear spotless school uniforms even when their shoes are patched with tape. Elderly couples still dance in plazas, celebrating love and endurance. Cuban life transforms limitation into art. Birthday cakes are baked from carefully saved ingredients, and decorations are handmade from recycled scraps, proof that joy when shared needs no abundance to feel complete. The dark sides of Cuba aren't separate from its beauty and vibrant culture. They're intertwined with them in complex ways that reflect the full spectrum of human experience under extraordinary circumstances. Recognizing this complexity doesn't diminish the real problems facing Cuban society, but it does provide a more complete and honest picture of what daily life is actually like on this remarkable island. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot to us. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks for being with us. Leave a comment, like to show your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button for more exciting videos. See you next time.